Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ComicBase live stream. I'm your host, Pete Pickard. I'm going to turn down my volume in my headphones because, damn, that's loud. Anyway, how's everyone doing out there? By the way, how is the sound to all you guys? Am I blowing you guys out, or just my own headphones? Anyway, give me a quick heads up in the chat if you would. Anyway, this is our second to last live stream of the year. Actually, it's our last proper live stream of the year. The next live stream is going to be kind of our comic-based Christmas party. It's going to be a little later than usual, be about 8 o'clock at night on next Thursday is where I'm aiming for, and that's going to be our comic-based After Dark Christmas party. And this is a chance for you guys to be part of the show, for us to hang out together, drink some alcoholic eggnog or whatever the heck your drinking preferences. We'll be swapping drink recipes as well, and just hang out and chat before we welcome in the new year. But that is going to be next week. If you guys are interested in being part of the show on that one, please send me a note. Put my email up here, pbickford@human-computing.com, and I will send you an invite to the StreamYard link. You're also welcome to join out and watch the proceedings on Rumble. We will not be on YouTube, that one. Well, I don't think we'll be on YouTube. We might start off on YouTube as a watch thing, but usually on the After Dark shows, we like to be able to talk freely, and as a result, Rumble is usually the way to go, because, well, YouTube is YouTube. Anyway, but that's that. On today's show, it's a bit of an odds and sods sort of show. I have a couple bits of news to talk about. I want to talk about kind of like lessons learned from our big adventures in going up to 2 gig, and things that, if you ever want to do this in your own life, things that you should be aware of, because, man, we learned a lot doing this. For going for the world, for faster internet, all the ins and outs of that one. I want to share a couple of comic-based tips that have come up. For some reason, the same thing has come up again, and it's sort of an odd thing both times, but I thought I would share it with folks. And a little bit of comic-based news, and then also want to finally get in my rant about pneumatic chairs. Yes, so if the only thing you've somehow stumbled upon this stream in order to watch is how to fix pneumatic office chairs so that you're not sinking into the floor ever so slowly as you go about your business, yes, we will show you how to do that at the end of the show, and also tell you about horrible things we learned while doing that. But yeah, so it's a bit of an odd one, but the other thing we want to do is we want to answer your questions. So please put them in the chat, put them to @ComicBaseTV, and we will hit as many as we can. Before we get going, I want to say hi to everyone here. Richard Scott, first in the door. Congratulations. Mike Beam, welcome from Portland, from the Pacific Northwest, Vancouver, Washington. Oro Viejo from Balmy, still halfway to the North Pole in mid-December in Minneapolis, 40 degrees and sunny. Yeah, well going. Jet City Comics joins us. Robbie Weinberg from out, I believe, Ohio. Cincinnati area, if memory serves. Xanadu Comics from Seattle. Greg Hecht, our moderators in the house, from out here in New Jersey. Ed Billiard from Richmond, California. And Mike B. Monster recently changed his process for using ComicBase, went from being based at home PC to using living in a laptop. Okay. As a consequence, it also went from the wired barcode scanner to the wireless one, which I totally understand. And let's see here. So I'm just an old hippie. If there's anyone who doesn't mind that's older tech still working on your address, you'll get one slightly used wired barcode scanner free. Well, guys, that is a deal. Someone direct message Mike, man, or if Mike, if you want me to act as a go around for you, that is absolutely awesome. Yeah. So. Forgive the sniffles here, guys. I like everyone else in my household, I have whatever the heck is going around. It's we always joke in the morning, it's super COVID. No, it's just a freaking cold. But anyway, about 2 years ago, a year and a half, something like that, we introduced our new barcode scanners. One of them is kind of like the supersized version or the super powerful version of our wired barcode scanner with stand. We call that one the DX3. It's much improved in terms of image recognition, speed, comes with the stand, much lower price point. I think it's just $99, something like that. And we also introduced a really, really slick guy here. This is our wireless barcode scanner. This is the one I use. just off my desk. You basically, fire it up, and yeah, you reach behind you, scan whatever the heck you got going on in your life, and there's nothing to trip over, and it's just kind of neat. But those are both available on sale, and we actually have them in stock this Christmas, so that's a good thing because we sold out last Christmas. And and honestly, if you guys are fast, your Mike will give you one for free, so go for it. All right, so let's see here. Let's see here. Oh, and people say sound is very good. All right, excellent, good. All right, so a couple of brief things here. So comic-based news. Auto renewals are now online. So what the heck, auto renewal? So yeah, basically just after about 1,000,000 years, we finally are doing what everyone else on the planet does, and that is we're offering you the ability to, when you buy ComicBase, even though it's conventional software, it will run forever, but as you all know, it runs much better if you also keep the update subscription current. So when you buy, say, the archive edition for $299 for an extra, nominally $149, for a year, it will let you download all the new week's covers, get all the new pricing every week, all the new, books, contents, thousands of cover image, the whole 9 yards. That was normally $149. We've added the ability to have auto renewing now. So instead of us asking you every year when it's about ready to expire, we say, hey guys, tell you what, we'll save you $20 off the cost of that if we can just make the default be that at the end of the subscription that it will automatically renew. And so we do what everyone else does on your credit card, and we say, all right, it's about to auto renew in a week. Make sure your credit card's current, and boom, it just keeps running. And for that, what we do is we basically put it perpetually on sale for you. So that's the same deal with all of our products now. We save you money if you just allow us to, automatically sign you up for next year, and you can cancel anytime. So just, if for some reason you're not using the program, whatever else, just go to your registrations, hit cancel subscription, and or cancel renewal. And at the end of the period, it just won't auto renew. It's all up to you, but we figure it's worth some money to us to even let you say, hey, don't worry about it next year. We'll just keep going. So anyway, that is live. It's happening. And if you guys have any feedback on that, good or bad, please let us know. It's a new thing for us. It's a really old thing for the universe because your cable company's been doing it to you forever. The only difference is we offer you money off. They don't. So anyway, that's the thing. All right. I think that is about it on the comic-based news for this week. All right, so answering some viewer questions, and I wanted to get to these ones because, like I say, they've come up a few times and they're kind of odd, so I figured I'd put them in there. All right, so let me go over to the proper computer. Nope, sorry, I got to switch monitors here. Give me just a second. Sorry, I was doing some work right before the show here, and I confused the dickens on myself, so switching my monitor over there. Okay, and let's go ahead and pop in. Okay, so the first question came up, and this can happen to you once in a blue moon. For instance, if you had, you had a Pro, you upgraded to the Archive Edition, and then you just renewed your Archive Edition. I mean, there's certain very, very specific things you could potentially do, which might get you into the spot. Not saying it will, but it might. But you might wind up at some point in your life with 2 serial numbers for a particular product you're using. If so, and if this has happened to you, you want to make sure that the copy of ComicBase you're working with is tied to the serial number that isn't expiring. So just to give you an idea of things, and let me do this in a way that does not show you my serial numbers for a second. I'm going to swap monitors because I need to queue this up because I don't want to show you guys all of my serial numbers, or at least not all my test serial numbers. So give me just a second here. I'm going to arrange some windows to be right over the top of what I'm doing so that you don't get to see anything cool. All right. Yes, this is a pro organization here. Okay, so back to the main monitor over here. So when you go under My Account and Registrations, that's hilarious, guys. All right, so when you go to My Account and then Registrations, you will see a list of all your registered products. All right. And you might see, for instance, that you have 2 4K archive editions or 2 24 professionals. Again, the scenario where this would happen is you had, you had ComicBase 2023, and Pro, and then you upgraded to the archive edition, after the time at which it had already renewed you, and we'd release ComicBase 2024 Pro. At which point you might wind up with 2 of the same serial number. If so, you might notice that your subscription is tied to, let's say this guy right up here is tied to is expiring, at the wrong date. You have two serial numbers that expire at different dates. What you want to do if that happens, so you've already updated and you're still getting a message saying that you're about to expire. Go under the help and then about ComicBase and check which serial number you're actually tied to. It'll say it right down here. Again, I make a big deal about not showing serial numbers. Not that it matters, because unless they're registered in your account, you can't use them anyway. But, hey, why ask for trouble? So for instance, I've got EF0008008154115 is the serial number that this guy is tied to. If I had a second 4K archive serial number in my account, and that was the one that was due to expire, that hadn't been renewed yet, what you want to do is in the About box over here, so that's Help, About ComicBase, go ahead and click on Edit Registration, put in your other serial number over here, and then say Register. It'll exit the program, and then when you launch again, it'll be tied to the non-expired serial number, and that should take care of that problem for you. So, I mean, the specific, like I say, it's a rare situation that would get you into this position. But if you ever sit there and say, "Hey, man, I just renewed. Why do I have, why am I still getting messages saying that my ComicBase is about to expire?" This is what you would do: is just double check your registrations, put in the proper serial number, relaunch ComicBase, and you'll be good. Okay, that was a lot of work for a very small tech support problem, but if that helps you, that's a good thing. Next thing, and this is another weird one, but it can happen to you. So we introduced a really cool feature in ComicBase, I think it was last version, which is the ability, if we go up under here, into the setup menu, and then, by the way, this only applies to the archive editions. So if you have Pro or Express Edition, go ahead and set this one out because you can't download new covers. But the Pro and the archive edition can download new covers the second we get them and put them in. And one thing that we can do, we added in here, is the ability to automatically download larger pictures when viewing items. So what that means is when you install ComicBase the very first time, we're going to install essentially thumbnail versions. They're small. They're 256 tall, versions of all the pictures, so that you can have all the pictures and not take up all your disk space for everything. As you can browse things, look at them in grids and everything else like that. But then we pull a magic trick and we say, hey, the second you go ahead and actually interact with any of the pictures in any way, you click on them, you use them, you show them in any way, it's going to magically behind the scenes download the high-res version, the biggest one we've got, the second you click on that picture. And it does it so fast that you kind of never know that you didn't have the big picture all along. So it's really the best of both worlds. So you've got, low disk space usage or really quick installs, but you also have the ability to, have really nice, pretty pictures when you look at them. And that's a combination of this setting right in here under your preferences to automatically download larger pictures when viewing items. And it works with a hidden field. You can't typically see it, but it's a hidden field that's held in for every issue of your in your database, which tells the database what size the picture it thinks you have is. So let's say I go to a title. Say when I build this, I go to Batman's second series. You see that, let me go to the next one. You see that little whoosh, as it first goes to the title. Let's go ahead and watch it again. All right. When it's doing that right there, it has figured out that you've got pictures of a certain size, and it knows, first of all, display the the grid down here, but it also has an idea in its database of how big the picture you've got is of all these guys. And now, if I were to show this hidden field, and typically you don't show it, it's if you really, really want to see it, if you have the archive edition, I believe you can get to it if you go under columns to view, and we look at. Let's see if we can get to it. It might be completely hidden, but let's see. Nope, we've got it right here. Picture height and picture width. So like I say, these are typically not visible fields. And honestly, there's not really a good reason to show them unless you're just super, super curious. But let's go ahead and make these visible. And now I'm going to scroll over so I can see where they are. All right, so here. picture height and picture width. Now, you see how it thinks I've got really very small versions, 120 pixels high in this case, of these particular items, except this one right here. The Batman Bruce Wayne, the issue where it thinks it's 850 by 551. So let's have a look over that. That's issue number 1. All right, now let's do something. All right, so let's take one of these ones that I had that was much smaller. Let's say the very first one. It says it's 0/C. Now, second I click on that, notice I'm looking at the giant picture, right? That's no 128 pixel. Oh, geez Louise. I'm sorry, guys. I'm on the wrong screen, and I was being completely not helpful. I apologize. If this were a radio program, I'd be great. But as a video thing, yeah, that's a problem. Okay, let's try this again. All right, you can show the column under setup and then columns to view. You guys, this is why I am a professional. Don't try this at home. If you have the archive edition and you go down here, you will see a couple fields down here which are picture height and picture width, which are typically turned off. But in this case, I've just turned them on. See, picture height, picture width. And let's go ahead right now, and I'm not gonna move them up right now. I'm just gonna leave them at the end of the list for now, just a demo. All right. Now, if I scroll over here, I'm going to make this a little smaller so we can see. You will notice that typically that it shows that the picture height and picture width is really much smaller on these ones. So for instance, it thinks that I've only got a 128 by 83 version of this picture right here. But the second I go ahead and I interact with this guy right here, you'll see it bumps up full size. It is clearly much bigger than 128 by 83. Now, it hasn't refreshed the list over here right now, so don't get too worried about that right now. Again, this is typically a hidden field, so we don't bother refreshing the list until we go back and forth. But when actually oh, sorry, that was 0C. But so now when we look at 0C again, you'll see that the picture it brought up was 1968 pixels by 1280 pixels. All right, let's have a look at the regular 0 now here, which again it thinks is typically 128 by 81. That's what it thinks. But let's go ahead and just going to click on it, right? And the time it took me to click on it, there it is, boom. It already downloaded the full-on version. Let's go ahead and refresh the list so we can see what size it thinks that is now. And you'll see that it knows that it now has a 1261 by 802 pixel version of Batman Second Series number 0. So basically, it does all this kind of behind the scenes refreshing of these pictures the second you go and interact with them. That's all you got to do is just touch them, think about them, whatever you got to do. In that second, it's already pulled down the big version of the picture. All right, now what happens if the magic stops working? So let's say I'd gone to 0A over here, where we saw beforehand that it had a it had before like a 120 tall pixel picture, and now you'll see it has a 1261 picture by 802. Well, what happens if I had a 0A and it didn't get bigger when I clicked on it? Well, one of two things happened. All right, first thing that could have happened is under setup, you might have not had the preference set to automatically download larger pictures when viewing items. So if you have that turned off, consider turning it back on, because it's a really useful thing, and give it a shot. If you're still on the same title, it is not going to refresh the grid on that one. Like I say, refreshing the grid, it costs a little something in terms of time. So we don't refresh items on the grid that we typically think are going to be invisible anyway. And so we're not super concerned about, keeping this up to date. We will do a refresh on it anyway when you go to the next title and back to the next title. If anyone's super concerned about that, let us know. I mean, again, we can change the way we work on some of this stuff, but everything comes at a cost in terms of like some fraction of a second of responsiveness. So we try to be super fast is typically where we'll prioritize things that we don't think people are actually going to see. But if that's something that's important to you, let us know, because that's the sort of thing that changes our mind about what things are worth refreshing and not. Anyway, so if let's say I clicked on 0A and it didn't get bigger, like I say, one of two things is happening. One is it's you had that preference turned off. The other thing that can happen though, and this is a little weird, is you might have had it. You might have fooled ComicBase. In other words, you might have had a record in your ComicBase which said that you have a much larger picture than you really have on your disk. Now, how can that happen? Well, there's the pictures in comic, that we look at in ComicBase. They're just living on your disk. We don't go messing with them. I mean, they're not part of the database. They're not part of anything else. There are literally a million of them. And so we don't go trying to manage them until it's time to manage them, because manage them costs time. It costs, resources and things like that. And you don't want to, you don't want to go to that effort unless you have to, because it would make everything very slow. The reason ComicBase is very fast is because we try to be super efficient about that. Well, as a result of that, because we don't look at your disk until we have to, it's possible, especially if ComicBase is closed, for you to do things behind our back. So one of the things you could do behind our back is you could change where all your pictures are. In other words, so like if you had all your pictures in one folder and you changed them to another folder and you didn't tell us, well, it's not going to find the pictures. That's one thing that'll happen. Another thing can happen is, let's say you had ComicBase, your database had lived on one computer, and then you got a brand new computer and you copied your database file over. So that old database file was tied to all your old pictures that were on your old machine. And so it knows all the big picture sizes you've got. But your new computer doesn't have those picture sizes. But we also had no reason to suspect that we should go and recheck the picture sizes for all those things. So as a result, and this is what came up a couple times last week when people called in about this one, is they got a new computer, they copied their database over to the new computer, they didn't bother copying the pictures, because when you install ComicBase these days, it automatically just installs the thumbnails. So you don't need to copy all your old pictures if you don't want to. But one thing went wrong, and that is, because it was a database that was just physically copy and pasted from an old computer, we didn't know that your database was referring to pictures that were no longer, they didn't exist in their larger format on the new disk or not. So we didn't go upsizing the old pictures because we thought we already had very large pictures for all those. So if we think we've already got a 1500 pixel tall picture of Batman #0, we're not going to go looking at our servers to say, hey, have you got a 1500 pixel or better picture? Now, after a certain size, we figured, no, we've got the big one already. We don't need to ask the server. So as a result, we don't. And so even though you've got your new computer loaded up with the smaller pictures, it still has got the records of your old pictures, which were much larger. It looks at them, says, well, I've already got a 1500 pixel tall version of Batman #0. Don't bother asking the server if I have a bigger one. I already know the answer. I already have the biggest one I'm going to get. So that's great for speed. It's terrible for you because now your database is lying, because your database doesn't have the new pictures anymore. So what do we do about that? And it turns out the answer is actually pretty easy. And I'm going to say this is a great tip for now, because it will solve your problem. But I'm also going to say this is something that we're going to somehow decide, going to try to be much cleverer about in a future version, so that we auto detect that this happened and don't make you think to do it. And did we just lose? I'm looking at the StreamYard feed, and it looks like I just lost the video. That's awesome. I hope that's not a thing. Okay, let's see here. Have we got... oh, man. Do not... Okay, it looks like I've just lost the video. Yep, video froze on YouTube. That sucks. I don't think there's a win for this one. Well, okay, what do we do here? Okay, well, all right, let's try this. I'm going to try unswitching the board, which will either end the stream, in which case, guys, it's been fun, or All right, so I've got a camera on there. Let's turn off the keying there. All right, I see myself again. So did we survive? All gone. Somebody goes, okay. All right, guys. I think we're back in business. If so, that was a drastic way out. Um, Okay, so, okay, so there we are. All right, so, well, another pro tip. So, if your chat ever freezes up on you in StreamYard, I guess if you pull the device and start and stop the camera, actually, now that I'm saying it right now, I bet you if I'd just simply stopped and started the camera and not pulled the power to my device, it probably also would have worked. But hey, this is live TV, kids. What are you gonna do? All right, so here we are. Okay, so where the heck was I? All right, so let me get my green screen up again because I lost that in the melee. Um, it's not ironically, it's not the green screen behind me. I just need to be able to open up my ones for keying effects. All right, so all right, there we go. And all right, good. All right, I've got that again. So now we can do keying effects again. Okay, so wow. Guess what? Yeah, why do these things happen when Pete shows up? Don't know, guys. Really don't. All right. So, the thing you wanna do if you ever get to a position where, your database has stored larger versions of the picture dimensions than are real, the thing that is very useful when you do that one, and let's try to go over to the computer again. Here we are. Boom! Hey, and that time it worked. Alright. So it wasn't so hard, people. Is there's two ways to go. One is there's a slow way that's very rewarding, and if you really like feeling like all the I's are dotted and the T's crossed, this does work. You can go into the file menu, go to Rebuild Lists, and go down to Rebuild Pictures List (parenthesis slow). And it says slow because it means it'll take generally a couple hours or at least an hour to do that for most people. And what that will do is it'll go to every single issue in the database and it'll say, have I got a picture? And if so, it'll load up that picture, get its picture dimensions, and store what the picture dimensions are in the database. So it'll completely redo that picture list. And so if you hit rebuild, it'll do the thing. If you let that run an hour, it'll do the whole thing very well, and that's a great thing to do, if you want. The other thing that works just fine, though, for all practical purposes, is if you simply go to the File menu, go to File Tools, go down to Manage Pictures and Movies, and then gratuitously change where your pictures are stored. So, in other words, the location for pictures and logos, change it to, so from C users, pictures, whatever else, change it to, I don't know, first folder you see, change it to, your C drive. Hit OK, because the very first thing it will do is when it knows that you've changed where your pictures are stored, is it will zero out all the list of pictures, picture dimensions in your database. And so basically, it'll think, I'm not sure if I have any pictures at all. Every single time I go to a title until I know further, I'm going to look. And as a result, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it right back. So I'm not going to actually do it on my C drive. I'm going to go right back to where I was, C users public documents. So I changed it to something else, and then I changed it back. And then what it does, let's go ahead and we can see this now, is when I go over here to Batman 3rd Series, for instance, and I jump over to the right, it immediately had to go and build this list. And now it gets the exact dimensions of what I have on my disk. Because it actually looked at the pictures as it went. It didn't assume anything, and so it actually looked at the dimensions. So that's a good way to go on that one. It's a great tip for now. I'm going to also say we're going to play with some ideas to automate the process. It's a perfectly, like I say, it's a perfectly fine tip, but I also know it's the sort of thing that is too obscure by half. People are going to copy databases to different disks. They are going to do things behind the back, things like that. And so somehow, we've got to somehow do this in a way that balances the time required to check because we certainly don't want to assume, we certainly don't want to always go grab the physical dimensions of a picture, compare it up to the server, send it that way and everything, because that would just slow everything to a creaking halt. But there is a way maybe where we just, I don't know, if we just check every fifth picture, if we look for certain trademark pictures and see if they're there, there's a way there somehow that we can pretty quickly determine whether or not your database got out of sync. And if so, just zero it and try again. And that's probably what we're going to do. But in the meantime, until we implement something like that, if you are having problems downloading new pictures, please go ahead to File, Manage Pictures and Movies, and just change the location of your pictures and change it back. All right, that is the tip for today. All right, this is sound and video came back, so I will take the win. All right, with all that said, let's talk a little bit about upgrading your network to 2 gigabytes and what that means to you. So we're not doing comic-based stuff per se right now, but with people doing faster and faster internet out in the world these days, I did want to talk about this because it's of interest, and we just spent a bunch of money. I mean, like thousands and thousands of dollars to upgrade our internet installation here from the 1 gigabit fiber that we put in about a year ago. Finally came to our network. Well, the 2 gigabit fiber finally rolled in, and we got it probably the day, or at least within a day or two of when it became available to our premises. This is United Communications we have symmetrical 2 gigabits either way, and we're getting it for the low price of $100. So shout out to the fine folks at United Communications. That's a hell of a deal. It comes with a number of compromises. One of them is that we are doing miracles with the one IP they're letting us have, the one fixed IP. But beyond that, other than having to do some very clever firewall programming, it's worked out very well. It's been very reliable. And unlike most cable internet that we've used, it delivers, close to the speed rated. There are lots of reasons that that when you buy, say, 300 megabit internet, that you never actually get exactly 300 megabits. But we've been generally happy with it so far. A couple bits of words about speed before I get too deep into it, though. When you're buying, say, gigabit internet, what you're really paying for is 1,000 megabits per second. Now, notice, not bits, not bytes, right? So when you're looking at space on your hard drive, you're always talking in terms of megabytes, right? Now, so a byte is supposed to be 8 bits, right? By the way, if you guys want to really geek out to your friends, what do you know what the name for half a bit is? What half a byte is? So 4 bits. It actually has a term in computer science. It's called a nibble. Yes, and that's with a Y. Anyway, nobody cares about nibbles. It's not a thing anymore. But anyway, 8 bits in a byte. So they say, except when you're dealing with communications. With communications, effectively, you never really do 8 bits in a byte. You're really, because there's start and there's stop bits, there's packet framing bits, there's parity bits, there's all sorts of crap that gets mixed into the thing. So the way you more or less spitball how big something is really is you treat it as if there are 10 bits in a byte, and that will get you pretty close to the reality of what you're really buying when you're buying things. Now, so let's now compare this to other speeds in your life. So if you guys have looked in Task Manager and you've saved, or you've done a big file copy, you might have noticed that your hard disk is moving a certain number of megabytes per second. Now, if you have an old-fashioned hard drive, maybe it's we've seen ones that come in on the tech support lines where like their computer's just absolutely dogging it. They have 1,000-year-old hard drive and it's really going terrible. And I've seen people getting 1-2 megabytes per second as for file copies. It's taking they've got their antivirus ramped up, and with all the load on their computer, it's taking like 10 minutes to make a backup file of ComicBase. Compare this to a working computer, it's running on, say, a NVMe SSD, solid state disk drive these days, the kind that all of us at this point ought to be having in our main computers, whether it's a laptop, whether it's a hard drive, because a NVMe SSD, so there's the kind that's socketed right onto the PCI, portion of the motherboard, the PCI Express lane. Those guys right now are going for about $80 for a terabyte. So there's no worldly reason why you should not have one in your computer right now, other than you just running a really old machine. But if you're buying a new computer right now, that is absolutely where you ought to be. So those kind of computers, when you see big file copies on those ones, not at all atypical to see hundreds, sometimes, a couple 300 megabytes per second. Now, to put this into networking speed terms, that's the equivalent of, if 1 gigabit of network speed is equivalent to 10 megabytes, right? So that's basically like, yeah, it's like a old-fashioned kind of slowish hard drive copy. That's about this kind of hard disk speed we would get with a gigabit line. 2 gigabits, which is what we just upgraded to, gets you the speed of a less pokey conventional hard drive. It's still a long way from what your SSD computer can do. So your SSD computer can do 10 times that. So the equivalent of 20 or 30 gigabits of speed. But then there's a reason that that's your SSD hard drive and this is not your network connection. So keep the expectations somewhat reasonable. The good news on all this stuff, on the other hand, is when you're talking about something that can copy 20 megabytes per second, to copy an entire ComicBase hard drive, you're still talking about 25 seconds. That's not such a bad deal, especially not over your internet connection. So the fact that it can do it in less time than that over your SSD connection, that can do it in a couple of seconds, that's great. But doing 23 seconds, I'm still gonna say that's pretty darn good for a network connection. So we'll take it. All right, so that's what we're dealing with in terms of like thinking about in terms of relative speeds, where we're kind of aiming on the dial for these sorts of things. So what we've effectively done for the price of doubling our internet bill, not again, granted, we were paying so much money for a fraction of the speed before United Communications came in. To give you an idea, back in San Jose, we were paying $600 a month for, I want to say, 20 megabytes. I'm sorry, 20 megabits worth of up speed. I think we eventually got that up to 40 megabits, so 4 megabytes, 4 megabytes down. But it's, I'm sorry, 0.4 megabytes down. But yeah, we're so far ahead in terms of gigabit internet in our area. It's nothing like what we had when we were living in an office building in San Jose just 7 years ago. So we are in a wonderful brand new world. So everything I do from here on out can be construed as absolute bitching. So let's get that clear. So we're simply talking about, well, okay, you want more speed. Now we've got a lot more speed for a lot less money. But now I'm talking about how did we effectively double it? Okay, that's the preamble. All right, so the first thing I will say about this, if you decide that you would like to embrace the world of multi-gig, internet in your life, so you suddenly got an internet provider in your neighborhood that can go faster than 1 gigabit. Now, gigabit internet has been built into all your gear forever. You have not bought a computer in the last 15 years that did not have at least gigabit internet on the back. All your network switches are at least gigabit on the back. You might have some pokey old TV set somewhere in the back room that's running something less than that, but even that, probably not. Gigabit's been the standard forever. It requires nothing extra for you to invest whatsoever. For you to go faster than 1 gigabit, on the other hand, right now, almost all of it is going to require you spending more money. So let's start with the network interfaces themselves. Whoops. Well, okay, let's start with the switches. So you probably have something that looks like this laying around your house somewhere. It's either in the back of your wireless router. It's got a bunch of ports like that. These are called RJ45 ports. You realize the little keystone-looking jack. That's the standard Ethernet cable, plugs into those guys. Now, your standard Wi-Fi router, unless it's at least a 6E or a 7 router, so like unless it is brand new, top of the line, off the shelf, straight from the Newegg or whatever else, it almost certainly, the ports on the back of your wireless router are almost certainly gigabit, not multi-gig. Now, what the bright boys who make this sort of networking gear figured out is that you can't get from 1 gigabit Ethernet to 10 gigabit without upgrading all your cables and things like that, but you can over the same wire most of the time. You can still get from 1 gigabit to 2.5 gigabit. So you don't need to swap new cables. You do need to have different switches. So your old Ethernet switch, your old Wi-Fi router, things like that, you're gonna need to buy another one. Otherwise, there's no point because you've stopped going faster right at the switch. So it won't matter what your computers do because they're taking in a 1 gigabit signal everywhere you go. If you're going to go to the trouble of investing in, so okay, I've now gone out, instead of buying a $20 switch, for to route all my Ethernet connections around, I've now bought a $110 switch to route all my stuff, and it supports. You'll see it say multi-gig, which typically means it'll go and do 2.5, sometimes 5 gig as well. You don't need 10, but you do need to go at least 2.5. By the way, for what's worth, TP-Link does a good one. TrendNet does a good one. So forth. Very reliable. About $100, give or take. A little bit more for about $100 for a 5-port switch. About 180, I want to say, for a 8-port switch. So not the end of the world. It's not bad. You're also, unless you have one of the last 2 or 3 generations of Intel on your motherboard, or the latest version of AMD, you're going to have to get a new Ethernet port on your computer, because the port on your computer is also going to be 1 gigabit. Now, the good news is USB 3.0 is happy to go much faster than that. So with a USB 3.0, the little blue guy on the inside here, you can go ahead and put in a dongle, which will give take you from USB 3.0 over here to a multi-gig internet interface over here. These guys cost about $25. I will put some links up in the descriptions. Pluggable does a bunch of them. They're plug and play. They work very easily. Basically, stick them in one of your available USB 3.0 ports. Plug an Ethernet cable into it, plug it into your multi-gig Ethernet switch, and now you have a multi-gig connection to anything else that's connected to that same switch. So the second you do that, you'll notice all your file copies between computers go much faster, and so forth. But the connection to your internet still won't be faster because your firewall and your router are not multi-gig yet. So first of all, you got to make sure, if multi-gig is available in your area, that you call up your company, order the faster service, and then you either have to buy their multi-gig Wi-Fi router, or whatever however they get it into your house, or you need to provide one of your own. Now, as I said before, if you're coming in a Wi-Fi switch on this whole thing, unless you go Wi-Fi 6E or 7, you are still dealing with below, you're still dealing with essentially with gigabit Ethernet. You're not going faster than one gig at that point, whether wired or wireless. So if you do want to have multi-gig wireless internet in your house, wireless, you got to go 6E or 7. But at the same time, also remember, your device itself has to be able to take a wireless 6E or a wireless 7 signal. So that one, you either need the wireless equivalent of one of these dongles over here, or probably just buy the very, very, very latest iPhone, Samsung, S23, etc. And also read the release notes on that one, because they probably still aren't going to go any faster, because there's all sorts of firmware issues with those guys. The thing that really works well in that world, though, is your desktop computers, your laptop and your desktops. Put them in with either the built-in late model Intel speed on the whole thing. Either plug them into your wired router that way, or attach them via dongle, and they will work at 2.5, and it will be pretty darn solid. That part's good. The problem that you will have immediately after you've gotten your wireless, your wired internet out to the outside world, though, even if you come in with their switch and so forth, if you're running an external firewall, we talked about this on the last one, you probably need to upgrade it to go to faster than 1 gig speed. We had to switch, for instance, from a TZ, I think it was either 270 or 370, a SonicWall, to one of their upper end models, much higher, and which of course involves much more costs and much higher support costs, simply because the packets coming in off the internet, in order for them to be inspected, cleared for virus, cleared for IP spoofing, and all the things that firewalls do, that computer needed to run fast enough along with the faster interface that it could serve those packets out to our network at something close to the 2 gigs that was coming in raw off the modem. Because you don't want raw internet in your house. You really don't. There's a lot of bad things going on in the internet. You really want there to be a firewall between you and it if you can possibly help it, because you would not believe the logs we get. If we just stand up a blank computer in a place that we've never been before, so it's not tied with human computing, it's not tied with anything else, but if you just stand up a blank computer, hook it to the internet with no firewall in, and just run logs, I guarantee that thing will be attacked within the hour by some script kiddie somewhere in Burma or China or wherever, who is trying to figure out what are the open mail relays so they can relay spam. What are the what are the different things they can exploit? Can they recruit it as a new member of their botnet, whatever the thing is. So yes, you need to have a firewall between you and it. Typically, the firewall came from your company's internet connection. So if you're buying your internet from a consumer service provider, typically the firewall will be built into the device that they're renting to you for however much money per month. Go ahead and look at the speed when you're all said and done, but don't be surprised, even if they're getting a 2 gig signal in, that what you're getting coming out of their firewall is a bit less, because that packet inspection does take some time. So for instance, even after we just completely, again, spent thousands of bucks upgrading ours, we are getting about 1.7 gigs effectively out of our network. Because the firewall has work to do. By the way, if you feel the back of the box, it's running hot as hell. It literally is. If I stuck my finger on it for more than about 5 seconds, I would be burning it. So yeah, that's it's a computer working its brains out, processing all that data. And if you think that's bad, man, the 10 gig stuff, from what I've seen of those ones, they require heat sinks that are, it's absolutely nuts. Passive cooling isn't a thing typically. And as Andre says, yes, that's why I say up to 10 gigs. Okay, now, last thing I will say that we found out here, let's see here, and we have some other topics here about, we'll get to that one in a minute. Okay, so the last thing I found out the hard way is, remember I said that the bright kids back, IEEE, the International Electronic Engineers something, I forget what the third E in IEEE is. But anyway, the folks who make standards for electrical signaling communications, they figured out that this lowly Cat5 cable over here, in theory, over certain lengths of cable, can run a 2.5 or higher gig signal. Now, that's true to a point. Typically, what you really want to have is not Cat5, but Cat5e to get 2.5 gigs in. Preferably, you want Cat6, Cat7, Cat8, etc. Now, the Cat stands for category, and if you look at what that all means is, it gets fairly involved, apparently, when you're dealing with very fast, packet switching speeds, about exactly how those wires inside here are twisted around each other, whether they're, how many twists they have per inch, what the crosstalk is between the different things, what the quality of the connectors is, and so forth, what the shielding around them is, and so forth, because the faster you go with cable signaling, the trickier it all gets in terms of keeping the speed up. And when it finds that it's starting to get transmission errors, your Ethernet switch over here, on a port-by-port basis, will very helpfully decide to lower the speed in real time until it gets a stable connection. So the second that it finds out that, I don't know, whatever device I've got hooked into my PlayStation 100 yards away, connected with Cat's 5 cable, or 100 feet away with Cat 5 cable, if it finds out that it can't get a stable signal to it, it's just going to start lowering the speed until it gets one. And it typically steps down by, you'll see your green 2.5 gig light suddenly become a orange light. Or even if you don't, if you hook it up on speed test or you watch it with a packet monitor, you'll just see that the speeds are just going down. What we found out, and it causes some drama when we first stepped up and started doing this stuff in the house, is our servers, which are hooked straight to what we call the backbone. It's the switch that's closest to your internet entry point, which all the really important components are hooked into. Our internet servers were doing great, but my office upstairs, was, I'm sitting there going, wait, I just paid for 2 gig internet service and I'm getting 1.2. Sometimes I'm getting 800 megs, out of this thing. I mean, it's better than I was getting before, but the hell, guys, I'm paying for twice this. Why am I not getting it? And what turned out to be the answer on the whole thing was a combination of two factors. One is you've probably seen that switches, I can run stuff from my internet connection to a switch, and I can take one of the cables, just like power strips in your house. You can take one of the connections from one switch and you can run it across the house to another switch and run more devices to that. And you can repeat this some period of time. They typically will have, old engineers will say things like, well, no more than 2 switches or no more than X number of cable feet and so forth. But the reality is there's no hard and fast rule. It has to do a lot with how good your cable is, how much, how long the cable runs are and so forth. What we found out the hard way, just from watching the metering from different parts and things, is every switch between where your Ethernet comes in, or actually when the firewall kicks it out to your destination network, every Ethernet switch you would add to it would add, shave effectively 150, 200 megabits off of the top speed you could get. Which again, if you're talking about 2 gigabits, it's not terrible. You're losing 10, 20%, right? You're going so fast that, in a way, it's like, are you setting the world record on the sprint run right now, or is it merely like is something that would be a world record at the high school level? It's still damned fast. But again, it's galling when you sit there and say it's not what I paid for. So you want to get rid of extra switches if you possibly can, which what that means effectively is what we used to have out here in the location I'm at right now, is we had 4 or 5 switches that were around people's desks or around different people's work groups. We had one very big backbone switch next to our wire closet, which would route things to the different workstations and locations throughout the building. But what we wound up doing in the end is we wound up getting a much bigger backbone switch and running more cable directly to people's end devices. So we got rid of, as it turns out, 3 of these destination switches. We just took them out of the loop. They're no longer a hop. They're straight run straight back to the backbone. And that definitely picked up the speed to those guys right there. The other thing we found out, and this surprised the heck out of me because it's not something people talked about all that much, is one of the biggest sufferers of the entire thing is, and I'm the guy whose work I care about the most as I'm working. But I'm sitting there and I can see the backbone from in my office right now across to where it hits, our wire closet. But basically I have down by my feet a little 14-foot cable that comes out of the wall behind me and goes across to a switch right in front of me, which my computers would loop off of. Between that switches adding its 200, its little bit of delay to the signal, and the fact that the cable that was running that 12 feet by my feet, just from the wall to right in the front of my desk, that cable, as it turns out, was just not quite up to spec. It was a perfectly solid, perfectly fine, reliable as hell. I'd had it forever, Cat 5 cable. It was not a Cat 5e cable, as it turns out. And by replacing it with a brand new cable, something like this, by the way, you'll notice, that the cables that are coming out there support the more exotic standards. The Cat 7, Cat 8, and so forth tend to be flat cables as well, but also very nice shielding. And if you were to strip them apart and count twists and things like that, you'll see that they're constructed very, completely differently. But replacing that little 12-foot cable coming out of my wall behind me, behind the Fallout mini nuke there, down by the thing, is where the wall switches comes up. Replacing that single cable right there sped up the 3 computers that I'm using to run the show and do all this stuff here by something like 600 megabits. It took me from, it put me reliably to about a 1700 megabit up speed by replacing one cable and getting rid of one switch. So in summary, I guess what I'd say is this, this is an expensive proposition. I mean, the individual bits aren't expensive. Like I say, the individual network adapters, if I just want to connect 2 computers to each other, and run 2.5 gigs between them. It's either free on a modern computer, which has a 2.5 gig port, or you just a couple of little 20 $25 adapters will get you there. That part's cheap. If your cable runs are short, you can get by with older cable that isn't necessarily the most exotic, and it'll do the job. The second you start piping them to other computers, you're going to start laying out for switches, which again, not a big deal. I mean, if I'm swapping video files, like which I was doing when we first started this whole journey, swapping video files between different computers on the network, going between 1 gigabit and 2.5 gigabit, I was like, yeah, excellent. Half the time to transfer, these massive hundreds of gigabit long files. That was great. But that part's not so bad. As soon as you start going out to the part where you're going to the internet, on the other hand, like I say, for ourselves, the cost really piled up. We had to invest in much heavier backbones. We had to invest in much heavier firewalls. The service itself is more expensive and so forth. So yeah, there was a bit of a price tag attached to this whole thing. Now, look, it's one of those things you kind of pay for it, you get it in place, and then you enjoy it until the next technical rev, which probably I'm guessing is 6-8 years out before anyone's in a big way going 10. So I mean, I'm glad we did it. It's a good thing. In terms of what the speed differences in life, effectively, let's to give an example for all y'all is for us having gone through all this trouble. When you download ComicBase Archive Edition on a new computer right now, the download of the let's say you also have a fast enough internet connection, so because we can't serve you anything faster than your own network will take it. But if you have multi-gig down, and just like we have multi-gig that we can push to you, so if you can take it the day as fast as we can give it to you, we can serve the data in half the time that we used to before. It went from being about a minute and 30 seconds to about 41 seconds. I'm sorry, a minute and 21 seconds to about 41 seconds to serve that file up to you. Obviously, the decompressing and things like that take a little time as well. But yeah, we took some time off people's stuff. I mean, faster is always better from a company standpoint. So it was an easy decision for us to make. If I were a consumer, on the other hand, I think I would have a difficult time telling you a single thing in your life that you would notice going between a gigabit and 2 gigabit internet. And again, I'm talking about a typical consumer. Again, if you swap video files across the internet with people, you're in a different boat. If you're pushing servers full of tons of multimedia content like we are to other people, it's a different boat. But if I'm thinking about people like, if you're just watching movies off Netflix, even if they're HD, 4K, whatever the thing is, you transfer really big files to yourself and so forth. Going between 1 gigabit and 2 gigabit on that whole thing, I gotta tell you, it's hard to see. It's not at all the difference that it was when we were talking about going from, when we talked about going from like DSL to our first cable connection, where you went from 1.5 megabits to 10 and 20 megabits. That was massive. It was the difference between something being so painful that you would do it or you would never do it, in terms of downloading certain things. But even video files these days, and video files were always the killers as far as, can anyone stand to download them? Even big 4K video files right now are, if I'm ripping things up to my Plex server, the nicest quality ones I'm seeing on UHD discs at all are like 70 gigabits, right? I'm sorry, 70 gigabytes, right? That is not a massive difference. So if I'm transferring them across my local network from one computer to another computer, you're talking about something. Does it transfer in 5-6 minutes or 3 minutes? It's like, well, it's good, but it's also a 2.5 hour long movie. So did I really care that I took 2.5 minutes off the transfer? Not really. So that's my take on all this stuff. I will try to post some product descriptions in the links later on about some things I found. I will say we did find out that they finally made 24 and larger port backbones that do 10 gig along the backside and 2.5 gig ports. I've just finally become affordable from makers that I'd say are worth trusting now. A lot of names that you don't know, like Sulala and things like that, but I'm going to say they've proven themselves, and I'm pretty happy with them. I've seen other channels do break aparts where they take some of these things like Mokerlink and Sulala and pull them apart and stare at the chips and the arrangements on the whole thing, and they're clearly like white boxed rebrandings of each other. I mean, it's literally the same designs on a lot of these switches. So I'm going to say the technology is maturing, so I think that we're all going to have 2.5 gig in our life 3-4 years from now. It's going to be a thing that we all have. Would I be in a rush to make it happen, in particular on the internet side as a consumer right now? Only if you're just a tech head. If you are, then, hey, enjoy. All right. Last thing I'm going to do. Well, actually, I want to hit comments, and then I'm going to do some other things. Let's see here. Mark says, or says, clarification on the ComicBase After Dark. Let's see. Technically, next Thursday is tomorrow, 12/14, but I bet you meant Thursday, 12/14. Yeah, I mean the Thursday after tomorrow. So, yes, that's the thing. Oh, yes, and thank you. IEEE is the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. All right, thank you, Internet. All right, and also wants to remind everyone, please, if you like this sort of thing, please hit that like and subscribe, because this is the sort of thing we do most days, except next time we'll be chatting comics and being all ribald and probably getting sloshed and having a lot of Christmassy fun. So that's the show. And by the way, you guys can be part of it, like as in on the show. So please send a note to pbigford@human-computing.com. I'm going to put that one out there once again. Oh, of course, I had it obscured with the Chiron, so let's try that again. Come on, hide. There we go. P. Bickford. Peter Bickford at humancomputing.com, pbickford at human-computing.com. Send me a note, and I will send you a link when we post when we get ready to actually do the live stream. It'll be the final thing will be in place 24 hours before it goes live, but we're planning on next Thursday at 8 o'clock Central, unless something goes weird. All right, and as notes as always about the message board for the forum topics and about Andre's world famous ComicBase cover gallery. All right, and okay, yeah, I'm gonna leave that be. And now the rant about office chairs. All right, so well, yes, and Richard, yes, there will be an update this week, because even though I'm not going to be doing a live stream, everyone else is still working. All right, so some of you may or may not know, my lovely wife Carolyn went on a trip to Italy last week with my sister. My sister had points somewhere at something, and she needed someone to go traveling with her. And I said, sure, I'll be working. I'll be back here with the dog. That's fine. You go. So anyway, so she had a lovely trip to Florence. The thing I figured I would do, I'll show you, is I figured I'm just simply going to fix everything in the house while you're gone, because that's how I roll passive aggressively when I'm not on fabulous European vacations. So one of the things I decided I was going to fix in the house while I was gone is, among other things, this chair that I'm sitting at this very moment, which, if you guys are watching the live streams over time, depending on how it's doing during the day, is either anywhere from here to here, and it can change during the course of the show as I sync or don't sync, or kind of shimmy up, hit the lever to pop it up again, and adjust myself down, the whole thing. This thing is like I think, yes. Well, actually, I'm sitting in the $100 or $150 chair from Office Depot at the moment. Before, just to my left is the $700 Aeron chair that is like the backup chair for the other workstation in my office, that we got off of a auction when one of the twilight of the tech companies back in the 2000s. One of the things, if you were in the Bay Area in the 2000s, during the big tech boom, is everyone got in, bought themselves a really swank San Francisco or Silicon Valley office, spent a crap ton of money on Aeron chairs, really fancy office tables, steel case, shelves and everything. It's just all the highest end stuff you could possibly do. And most of the companies then immediately went bankrupt within 18 months because whatever their great .com-y idea did not pan out. Their investors eventually said screw it, and there was an auction site in the Bay Area, which us little entrepreneur type people could go to, where we could go to these vast office buildings that had all just gone belly up and buy their Aeron chairs for like 100-200 bucks. Yeah, so that's how us little guys got a chance of the big life back when we were getting going. Well, anyway, that was 20 years ago, or 23 years ago. And one thing, if you guys have all had an Aeron chair or any kind of pneumatic chair in your life, is you'll know is after 10 years, maybe, if you're lucky, you're not very big, the thing will slowly start going down on you, and you can crank it up and it'll start going down on you. And what's really happening is that the pneumatic cylinder underneath it is, the gasket's wearing out. It's losing its ability to contain the pressure, and there's no fixing it. I mean, once that thing's busted, it's busted. You're not going to go back and reconstruct the cylinder. That's not a thing. And what most people will tell you to do in that case, so if you ever Google up fixing, pneumatic office chair, is they'll describe mechanisms by which you can either get a couple of hose clamps from Home Depot, wrap them around the cylinder so you get the thing at the height that you can stand, and you take a couple of hose clamps, you tighten them down as hard as you possibly can, and then wrap some duct tape around them. That's fix number one I saw. There's a slightly more involved fix like that, where you take some PVC pipe, you cut a notch in it at the appropriate height, and then you snap it around the cylinder so it just simply can't go down any further. A lot of things like that in the wiki house and stuff like that for fixing your office chair. The downside, of course, is that you can never again adjust the height of your chair if you do either of those things. I mean, they're cheap, they work, but I mean, you got the thing with a pneumatic adjustment ideally, so that either more than one person can sit in the chair. You could change your mood or where you sit or where else during the day, and you could change its height on purpose. You just don't want it going down when it's not on purpose. So if you want to fix that, you have to fix the pneumatic cylinder itself, which is the little guy at the base of the chair. There's like a column, and what that is well, basically it's air based, but using it basically allows air to flow in or out of a cylinder, allowing it to adjust the whole height. That column has lost integrity. If you replace the entire column, you've fixed your chair. The problem with this is many, and just for anyone who wants to go and do this, because again, this was the thing I was going to do. While my wife wasn't, the second she came back from Italy, I will have fixed all the things around the house, finishing up with a couple of our office chairs. So order the appropriate pneumatic cylinders off of Amazon. Watch the video. By the way, and I'm going to give these guys a real shout out. Sorry. Held in by my own headphones here. If you guys ever see these guys, I'm going to say, they are Office Oasis. These guys make a quality product. This is about $30. And what it is it's a brand new pneumatic cylinder. It also comes with, and the reason for these will be clear in a moment, a pair of white working gloves and a very, very crucial device, which is 2 matching split cylinders, which you use an Allen wrench with. They also provide you the Allen wrench. And what these do is you put one of them right by the base of your chair. You put the other one right by the column underneath it. And when you tighten these knobs, these ones here and here, these push into this. This is already rammed up against the base of the chair. This one is locked down tight against the shaft. And as a result, it forces the pneumatic cylinder out of the chair where it's been rammed in low these many years. The alternate methods for getting that damn thing out of your chair, I've seen everything from rubber hammers to pipe wrenches to you name it. All of them don't work very well. They will all beat the crap out of your chair and your cylinder. Don't do it. This thing is freaking genius. It's also about $20 if you buy this as a separate tool. You have it once in your life. You'll be able to fix every pneumatic chair for the rest of your life. Worth doing. And the whole thing comes in a kit from Office Oasis. Like I said, give them a free plug on this one. They did a great job. But there is one final problem with this one. So my wife is due home in hours. I have been sitting up there. I've rewired things. I'm covered with fiberglass from crawling around crawl spaces and access things, rerunning, Cat 7 and 8 cables down, access panels into our backbone. I mean, we've been doing it all, but damn it, I'm going to show her a perfectly wonderful, nice blinking, everything up to speed, well labeled, very organized place when she gets back, except that I have a couple of destroyed office chairs, which have their pneumatic cylinders ripped apart, from them, only to find out that the replacement cylinder, as sold by literally everybody, looks like this, does not fit any, and I mean any, of our chairs. So all of the chairs we've got, you basically got this little top nub over here, the little lever you've got, that you're pushing, when you're raising it up or down, is pushing down on this little detent here, which allows air in or out of the cylinder. When you sit on it, it compresses that post down. This thing is supposed to fit right into the base of your chair, this big fat column right there, except that once I pulled off the pneumatic ram on my Aeron chair, off my cheap Costco chair, off my cheap Office Depot chair, off my other Aeron chair, they were all the same. They all looked not at all like this thing at all. Instead, they looked like a big spindly column which digs right into the floor of the whole thing, and is not pictured anywhere in any chair take apart tutorial on the planet that I've seen. I'm sure there's a lot of things that I didn't see, and this might have been in there somewhere, but the final revelation, and again, I'm going to give a shout out to the folks at Office Oasis here, because when you open up their little, generic, supposedly universal kit, which did not universally fit any of my chairs, because there was not a tiny little column for it to fit into, they got back to me very quickly, and inadvertently they wound up cluing me in on the true source of things, because somewhere in all the futzing around, I came across an exploded diagram, which is, here's what the same thing looks like if you remove the outer casing of the pneumatic tube. No take apart tutorial or no fixing tutorial I've ever seen for fixing pneumatic chairs shows you doing anything but taking this entire assembly, dropping it into the floor of your base, clipping it down with a little clip there, a flat blade screwdriver, popping your chair back on top, sitting down with a look of satisfaction on your face and saying, aha, I have fixed it. That's the way every single one of the videos ends. But thank you for the exploded diagram on the back here, which says, oh, by the way, if you happen to have a chair which somehow has the base molded into it, which is, again, is every single chair in our household, it turns out you can simply pull this top part right out of this outer casing. And by the way, it'll be covered in horrific amounts of grease and things like that. Gloves would have been really great to have had in my hand at that point. I thought, nah, I'm going to save the gloves. They're nice. I don't want to mess them up. So yeah, anyway, once I cleaned my hands off again, I found out that yes, I'm now looking at the exact part I wanted, which is to say the skinny down ram looking thing, which that thing does fit into my pre-molded chairs, and it all worked beautifully. So anyway, that's the rant. And at some point, if I decide to change professions on the whole thing, that would make a wonderful take apart, fix your whole thing. The good news on this whole thing is you can fix your $750 Aeron chair for like $20. An extra $10 if you buy the take apart tool right over here. Highly recommended. I'm gonna once again give a shout out to Office Oasis. Good folks, and for a repair parts company that actually answers texts within an hour or two, I gotta say, well done you. So anyway, that's the deal, and hope this helps someone, and that's about it. I will talk to you guys later. You have a good one. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.